will set these variables that we pass in as parameters. It will also set this last created unit that we can use to get the number of the last created unit, and then it will just skip out of the trigger, so that we don't overwrite all the slots each time. Then we have this add modification unit, which simply adds modification to the unit in the slot specified. So we can use these triggers, these three triggers combined to add units and add modifications, as we have done here. Finally, we needed, of course, to be able to spawn some units and start new levels. So we added this spawn next wave trigger down here, which will start the wave for the specified player. It will also increase the current wave number for the player. And it will loop through each unit in the next wave and check if there is a unit supposed to be spawned. It will call this spawn unit in wave function. Spawn unit in wave, it takes in these things. You could have passed in the variables as parameters if you wanted. Then this, I did this in my own map, which we'll see later. That way I could call this internal function directly to do testing if I wanted to spawn a certain number of units just for testing. Anyway, in this case, we got the spawn delay out up here because it created a bug if we took it out directly in the wait timer. And we set this to true so that we know that a spawner is active. We need this to check if the wave is done. Then we loop through each unit, create it, call up the apply modification trigger, which simply applies our modification to the unit. And then we wait the set delay and keep spawning, and once all the units have been spawned, we disable this. We set this to false and it quits. This trigger is also a thread, so that we can run multiple unit spawners at the same time. Then lastly, we added these get functions, mostly to get data out of our variables, because we don't want to access the variables all over the place. It's a lot better to just access these functions, because if we should change the internal design, we could probably work around to get the final level number out here and return it, instead of having to go around and find every place we use this function. A great thing here also is that if you try to delete this function, you will see all the triggers where it is used. That way, if you have a function that you want to redesign or remove, just try to delete it and you will find out if it's being used currently. Alright, that's all really for this map. I also added this kill unit and move unit, but this is not part of the tutorial as this is not really relevant. So let's go take a look at my spawner that I created for my own map. Here it is. You will see spawn unit takes everything, the delay, the amount, unit type, spawn point, and everything in as a variable. Parameter, I mean. This way, as I say here, don't call directly unless you want to use it to test. I should have a trigger down here somewhere in my game region here. Test spawn. I actually created units. This was before I made the spawner. But you could call this spawn unit directly just for testing purposes in my map. So you'll see what my spawn unit function does. It creates spawn a unit. And here it sets some custom values that I use for other stuff, like the wave number, which slot it has in the wave, how much bounty it should give, for instance, which I pull out from here instead of going into my variables, and some other stuff. This is things you could do for your own map, set custom units on custom values on the unit, and it calls this apply modification trigger, and it should be in the internal here. And you will see my apply modification trigger is way more advanced than the one we created. That is because I have 3 types of modifications for my waves. I have my one-shot modifications, which are not yet implemented in the map, but basically I could set up random modifications between waves, and after the wave this thing is wiped. Then I have difficulty modifications, and I have the special wave or standard modifications and special wave modifications. So there's a lot of modifications to apply in this map, you will see that I have a lot more variables for storing my modifications and so on. Other than that, this system is just slightly more advanced than the one we created, but other than that, it actually is exactly the same, just these add triggers and so on. And you'll see in my init waves up here, it gets a bit more complex, but I still find this a lot more readable, or a lot easier to modify and so on than having these variables, setting these variables directly here, like many people like to do. Of course, if you prefer setting your variables directly, then, or your arrays directly, then go for it. But I like this method. Alright, that pretty much sums up this tutorial. Since I actually have no intention of finishing my tower defense map, I'm going to put a link to it in the comment, along with the map we created for this tutorial. So if you want to take a look at my tower defense map, see how I did things, you can even start digging into how I created my sidebar that you saw earlier, which I will go over in another tutorial later on. I just want to recode it to make it easier to use, so that people can just copy-paste it into their map. Here you will also see I've create some custom conditions, and more functions and actions and so on. So, yeah, enjoy, have fun with it. I don't care what you use it for. If you want to copy things directly from this map, then go for it. Use it as you please. So that sums up this tutorial. I think it ended up being about an hour. So I'll take a break now and have fun.